And welcome everyone to another episode of Black Comics Chat. What's up? You are listening to the driver of the Red Lion, the undercover Sith Lord of the group. This is Latinegro Anthony Otero, and with me we have a very special guest. But before we announce who that is, I want to let's see, Marcus. I don't even know what is your sign on, your
Oh
nickname.
man, yes, right. I'm always
You're
handing out
always
the
the one.
nicknames.
Yeah. You're the one handing out the nickname.
Yeah, man. I guess at one point I was the Lester Freeman of podcasting. For all the wire heads. Um, you know what, man? I have to cook on that.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out. Probably something we should have
call me Chill Colson. I'll be Chill Colson.
Chill Colson.
Yeah.
All right, Chill Colson. I like that. I like that. Okay, so very special show. Something I've been personally wanting to do. We have Marco Lopez, who is the editor of Puerto Rico Strong, among other things, of course. Welcome, Marco.
Hey, how's it going?
Again, very excited to have you on. I think we're going to have a really good show. We're going to talk about a lot of things, especially, how the discussion we had in the green room has set the tone for how I think the show will go. So, as we normally do, let's start out with your origin story. How did you get to where you are
now? Okay. So I'll try to make it as short as possible, so I don't bore anybody. So I've always loved comic books. I mean, the only reason you want to get into this crazy field is you have to love comics. And when I moved to New York is when I realized I wanted to make comic books and to be in the industry, which at that point, of telling my parents, hey, I want to be first I wanted to be a comic book artist because I was an artist growing up. And I was like, I want to be a comic book artist. And my parents were like, dear God, what did we do? They, both of my parents are Puerto Rican. So, Latinx people are very traditional people. You know what I mean? It was just basically like do the job that will give you the safety net and, where life will be easier for you and won't be hard and all that. And so telling them before that I was going to be a veterinarian. So then changing it from that to comic book artist, that's just like my parents were like, oh, we messed up with that one. On to the next one.
Wow.
So fast forward to graduating from high school, and I graduated in 99, and basically I was like, all right, so it's time to pursue this thing. And I just did you go to the forums, you find comic scripts and see what they're written like, because at that point before I graduated I switched from being an artist to a writer. And so I looked for comic scripts, learn the craft, make a lot of mistakes, asking questions you shouldn't ask, got yelled out by a pro, won't say who it is. You make stupid mistakes because you're stupid because, you just got out of high school and you don't really understand how the world works. And I did get to a point where I had a contract with a UK company called AP Comics, which is no longer AP Comics. It got bought by a company and then turned to what is now a small, I guess I wouldn't say they're small, but I don't even think they're really in Diamond anymore. They're called Marcosia, which is a UK imprint, and they just basically graphic novels. But back then when they were blowing up, it was like early 2000s, I had something going, and then it ended up falling apart because of the artist. And then after that, I had something else going with the person who is now the EIC of Marvel Comics.
I see.
C.B. Cebulski had back then a small publishing imprint called Fanboy Inc. This was after he came from the world of anime manga. I think he worked back then before Fanboy Inc. and he worked at CPM Manga or CP Manga, whatever it was called. And I pitched him a book and he liked it. And it was going to be one of the characters. He was going to do a whole ad in Wizard. It was going to be a whole thing, but it ended up, I remember in the early 2000s, the indie market took a big hit, the indie like a lot of indie publishers. So that ended up folding. And eventually he ended up, going to work for Marvel, and everybody knows where that went with him. For me, it became an on and off thing with comics. I also pursued film. Which is something that I'm still pursuing to this day, and I got a bunch of irons there. But then around 2010, I said, okay, it's time to put my money where my mouth is. And so I started doing a comic book that's not online anymore, but it was called Massively Effective. And it was a 4-issue miniseries. And it was just like a buddy comedy thing. Like, if you like Booster Gold and Blue Beetle and
I do.
What are the dudes? Quantum Woody, that great comic that Christopher Priest created.
Right.
Yeah. But it was similar in that, but it was a little more like Saturday morning 80s meets that. But it was cool to go around, show it off to creators and other people in the business. I'd gotten quotes from like Ross Ritchie, who owns Boom Studios. I'd gotten quotes from Jim Zub and Matt Hawkins. And I think I got like quite a bit of people in the business. And then I decided to just do it as a web comic. It was on Comixology for a bit. And basically I just used that as a proof of concept of like, hey, I can write comics and these people like Jeffrey Thorne are saying good things about my book. Hire me.
Right.
Which is what they tell you to do in comics. They say, hey, if you want to be in comics, go make a comic and show us you can like write a comic or put out a comic. Basically show us everything. You can do everything that includes writing a comic book and making a comic and putting out a comic and marketing a comic and, all that stuff. And then, get it to us and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So then fast forward again to 2014 and I was living in California because I've crisscrossed this nation more than any normal person should. And, in 2014 I was living there, but 2015 I'm friends with Brandon Easton and he was like, hey, you go to WonderCon? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, come to the Lion Forge booth. I want to introduce you to some people. And I'm like, cool. And I went to the booth. He introduced me to I believe it was Ike Reed. We switched business cards. I dropped off an ash can for another book I was working on. Then I didn't hear back for a bit. So I basically was like, screw it. I'm going to do the non-traditional thing. And I hit up Carl Reed, who's the co-founder of Lion Forge. And I explained, what happened at WonderCon and, just looking to see if there's anything I could pitch on. And he was like, I sent him some of my work and he was like, yeah. So he was like, we got 2 things. And I pitched on both, got one. And basically we're off working on it. And it was a licensed book. I can't say the people they're working with because I don't even know if they're still doing it. It never came out, but that thing ended up getting I ended up getting taken off that title because there was a difficulty with the people we were working with on that book. So Carl hit me up one day and he's like, do you want to work on this other title? And it was more my speed. And I was like, sure. I was like, let's do that. That's way better. And I can get behind that. So we worked on that like crazy. I did, I didn't even need to pitch it. They were just like, no, you're on the book. And I was like, okay. So I did a pitch / Bible anyways, because that's how I am. So that book then unfortunately got put on hold because at the point that you could say we were going to move back on it again is when they decided to switch gears to their Catalyst Prime superhero line.
Okay.
So they were like, that's put on hold. And I was like, no. It's one of those moments where you just like want to do the whole Kirk scream,
Con.
Yeah, Con scream. And then I did some work for them on their Lion Forge. They have a thing called Lion Forge Labs, which works for like, corporations and schools and all that using the comic book format. For different business things and school stuff. So I did some work for them on that. I did a issue of Xenoscope's Grim Tales of Terror. And then I did nothing for a while until the book that is the reason why I'm on here. And that's my short version. So if anyone's like, God, dear Lord, that's the short version, I don't want to hear the long version.
No, it's good. It's good.
Wow. So that sounds very impressive. I like the way you basically described even the little things in the comic industry that I don't think a lot of us get to hear. So that's a good thing. So how did Atomic Rex Entertainment come about?
Oh, that was I needed, when I was doing the comics, when I was like, okay, when I was with, because I created Massively Effective with my friend Brian Jin. And so when I was like, I need a name for to put on the book, because you can't just put the book out. You got to have like a label on there. Because I guess it's written somewhere in stone that you can't put a comic book out unless it has
a name, right?
I mean, if you look at if you were to go to con and look at every indie comic, everyone has a label name on their book. Even if they're not a publisher and they're just putting out their book themselves, their book has a label. So I was just like, I need one. And it came out when I was living in Texas, again, crisscrossing across the United States. And we were talking about, I don't know what we were talking. I think we were talking about Scooby-Doo and shows like that. And, I was tossing ideas at my friend Brian about, we should do like a web series or something like that. And then for some reason in my head, it popped up Atomic Rex Entertainment. And Atomic Rex popped in my head. And then I was like, oh, Atomic Rex would be a cool name for a punk band or an indie rock band. And then he was like, why don't you just make it like the name of the label for the comic book? And I was like, that's even better. And that's how that came to be. Not a really impressive story, just a story of need.
And that's okay.
That's how it's done. You're pulling back the curtain.
But yeah, that's how that came to be. And I pretty much closed the website out, and I still use the logo because I'm going to use it for probably next year, 2020, this comic book thing I've been working on that's like a punk rock superhero type thing, called Atomic Rex. So, I decided to, and also close down the website that had Atomic Rex and the comics and everything. Because I also did a bunch of web comics besides Massively Effective. I did a bunch of short stories, but I closed that all down because I've got some. One of the irons I have in the fire for comics is this whole label I'm setting up with a couple of other guys. Two of them actually. We're setting up this whole thing. I can't say anything more than that, but with a couple of the editors from Puerto Rico Strong. So we're going to be doing this whole indie thing later this year. So that should be cool.
Dope.
Awesome. That sounds really dope. So I'm not gonna get into Puerto Rico Strong yet. So what made you decide to transition between an artist to a writer?
I don't know. I mean, I think it was more so that mentally I was drawing less. I mean, I drew a lot when I was a kid. I drew a lot in junior high. I went to, actually in New York, I went to the High School of Art and Design.
Okay.
And I think it was when we moved to Puerto Rico, because in '96 we left New York and then moved to Puerto Rico. And I went to school on a military base. And I think it was during that transition when I started getting really heavily into film. I always watched movies a lot, but my high school years in Puerto Rico is when I got super heavily into cinema, because like a mall was literally within walking distance from where I lived. And so I was like always at the mall, because they also had a comic book store, Metro Comics, which was my comic shop back in Puerto Rico. And then that mall also had a movie theater, so I was there a lot watching movies. And that's when I started to think like, wow, I besides comic books, I think I could do this movie thing, direct or write, And it was also when I lived in New York and I was at the High School of Art and Design, my English teacher, we had to do one of those, like generally English in high school, they always, at some point you got to do like a creative writing thing.
Yeah.
I did one. And my teacher pulled me aside and he was like, hey, so I just want you to know your story's good. You should write more. And I was like, are you sure you're supposed to be telling me that in this school? You know we're the High School of Art and Design, right? So I was like, okay. And I guess because of I wish I remembered his name. Because literally probably be that point is when I thought, I guess I should write more. And I just stopped drawing less once I went to Puerto Rico, and then I became a writer.
Awesome. So you mentioned a couple of film projects, and I'm assuming you either can or can't talk about it. But when it comes to the writing, your sort of your writing, your inspiration is there very much of a difference between writing a script for a film and writing a script for a comic book?
To me, there's not, because I've gotten it because I use Final Draft for screenplay writing, but I also know you now use Final Draft for comics. And what I basically do is I really just have to make slight changes, because comics is a page one, panel 2, panel 3, and then between the panels is, dialogue, your SFX, which is the, boom, bow, things like that, your captions and all that. So the way Final Draft works is that, if you've ever seen a screenplay, how it formats down the middle, dialogue and stuff like that. Yeah. So my comic script is sort of like a half breed between, screenplay and comic book script. And so what's more harder for me is prose writing, because last year I started doing that. And this year I'd like to try to get a couple of prose short stories out there, but that's a lot more pain. Like screenwriting and comic book writing, writing comic book scripts has become like second nature to me. But prose is still very much one of those that I'm just like, I don't know how anybody does this.
Yeah, it takes a lot of patience for one. Yeah, but I totally understand that. Okay, so let's get to the subject. So let's talk about Puerto Rico Strong.
Cool.
How did you come up with this idea to do this?
So last year, as everyone knows, 2 hurricanes hit Puerto Rico, and so the first one hits, and it was bad. Not to say it wasn't. And the second one, when the news that a second one was coming, I was like, I was like, this is crazy. I mean, this is like one of those, like, I guess you could say it's a once in a lifetime thing. And I was like, how is, just one of those things that when you still think about it, you're just like, it's just nuts. And so I'm sitting there watching the TV, and I was like, I gotta do something, because I've been through hurricanes. I like to call myself a hurricane connoisseur, because I went through Hurricane Andrew, which was in '92 in Miami, so I know how crazy and devastating and brutal hurricanes can be. I've gone through probably my whole life 5, 6 hurricanes of various degrees of power and brutality. So I was just like, I gotta do something. I know comics. Comics is, writing, storytelling. It's my thing. So I hit up Derek, who's one of the editors, and I said, hey, remember Love is Love? And he was like, yeah. I was like, you want to do something like that for Puerto Rico? They start saying hurricanes coming, and he's like, yes. And I was like, cool. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go hit up Desiree, who was one of the other editors, and she is an assistant editor for Lion Forge. So I hit her up, and immediately she was like, yes. And I was like, all right, this is easier than I thought. So then Derek is like, do you want to bring in Neil? And I'm like, yeah, I like Neil. So we brought him in, and then we started doing a email chat, and I said, all right, I'm going to go contact a bunch of people. So I started contacting, his, Latinx talent, that's in the industry, and seeing if they'd be interested. And I got, some good responses back. And then I was like, well, how do we want to get this out here? And I said, do we want to contact Lionforge? Because I have worked for them, and Desiree works for them. And I'm like 99% sure that they'd be up for this. And so everyone was like, yeah. And Desiree was like, yeah. And so I contacted Carl, because I still, every once in a while, talk to him about stuff through email. And I explained to him what we were doing, and he was like, "Give me a bit. I'm gonna go take this to a meeting we're having, and then I'll let you know." And I was like, "Okay." And then I believe at that meeting, Desiree was also pushing it. And then I think like a day or two later, Carl was like, "All right, let's do this." And I was like, "That was a lot easier than I thought." And then we were, I guess you could say, off to the races. And we started contacting people left and right, and getting things going.
Wow. Well, I gotta say, I'm sorry, Tony.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say real quick, just looking, I mean, when you logged on earlier, I told you just how much I love this book, but like I also feel like I just want to carry it around with me. So like anytime anybody says anything to the effect of there's not a lot of creators of color who are talented, or a lot of, Latinx creators, etc., I'm just gonna pull it out and be like, what? You know what I mean? Because like it's just every story in this book is just like they're all so diverse artistically and narrative wise, but they're just incredibly done. And the strong theme, Puerto Rico strong theme definitely carries throughout the book, regardless of like how the stories differ. So I'm just in awe of what you guys were able to do, and it's for a good cause. So
thanks. It's funny that you bring up the like showing people the book and being like, "Hey, this is talent you can hire for other stuff." Because when I was one of the things I started talking about, I think when this book, before it came out, or when it was in previews, or when it did came out, was I was like, publishers can now pick up this book, and there's no excuse. And at C2E2 on the panel, I got to be on the panel with the guys behind Black Comics Return, which is a fantastic, amazing hardcover. I remember sitting in my friend's comic shop, just going through the hardcover and being like, "This is the coolest thing ever." And they brought that up. The moderator brought that up, and they were talking about that. And I got so enthralled with it that I forgot to, I was going to make the funny anecdote that like, "Oh yeah, that's what I love about this, because, we think the same thing with this. And there's 2 books now." That's the whole point of my rambling here, is that there's two. There's Puerto Rico Strong and Black Comics Returns. Like literally, there's no excuse for the comic book industry. We did all the work for you.
Right. This is sort of like a demo tape for a lot of people in this book.
Yeah. There's literally no, I mean, it's the comic book industry, so like there's 1,000 excuses, but they're literally, it's like, it's 2 books. You go through it and you find the name of that person and you look at them up online, and I'm sure, and I think almost every person in that book has an online portfolio or a website or art online, or a writer work that they've already done that you can pick up or order or whatnot. So like, honestly, I mean, I can be pretty blunt sometimes. So like, I don't got sympathy for people. So I don't got sympathy for this industry. So I'm like, no excuses. It's like, you can't say you can't find these people when you got 2 books. Our book is 202 pages. I forget what the page count of Black Comics Returns, but I know it's high. It's like, that's literally, a free pass. It's like, just open up the book, find someone, hire them.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I noticed in the way this book is sort of formatted is there's a rhythm to it. There's a definite rhythm from story to story. Was that done purposely?
I want to say yes, but that came down to Hazel and Desiree. And Hazel has had experience working on putting together other anthologies, and I believe some of them were charity anthologies. And so Hazel, when it came to putting together the book, I believe Hazel was the lead on that, and then Desiree worked with her on it. And I want to believe that was on purpose, to give it that feel, that rhythm that you're talking about. So I'm gonna say yes on that, but if I'm wrong, then I said nothing.
I think it definitely has to be. There is a rhythm. I think Tony's right, and it seems like it was very well, well crafted in that sense. So yeah.
So, what amazes me, and I guess only because I know that I did some work on the back end. Um, Talk a little bit about your deadline. Like, how much time did you have to put this together? And because again, working from the back end, it seemed pretty fast, but I could be wrong. And fast being good, like I was really amazed by how everything came together. Can you talk about sort of like on the back end, the deadlines, and maybe a little bit of the pressure you may have been under to have this come out?
Because here's the thing, even though we started that week of the hurricane, and there's a lot of pre stuff, getting together talent, doing. I mean, Desiree is amazing with Excel because, like, if she didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to keep order of anything. But from that to once you have the teams together and everyone's picked, what they're gonna do, to if you look at it really, because it's like, yeah, it was from when it came out to when we started, it was like 6 months, but really like 2 months of that was like a month of that was maybe like the prep time, and then like 3 months of that was probably the actual work time, and a couple of other months is just basically like putting book together and all the other stuff. And it's one of those experiences that, like, when it was all over, I was like, I don't ever want to do an anthology ever again.
Wow.
Because the thing is also is once we made the announcement that the book was happening, the official announcement, and once it was in previews, we were like, okay, so what? We decided to do we have room that we could get more people. So then we did like a sort of shout out on social media of like, if anyone's interested, and I believe Desiree contacted some people that maybe she didn't contact before, I didn't contact. And, so there's people that came on board at the point in which you literally had maybe like a month and a half or a month to wrap up the book. And so we're like, I think at that point we had like 3 3/4 of the book. So we were like, oh, we got room to like, squeeze in some more stuff. So let's be crazy and just like, squeeze in some more people, because why not? So it's literally because like they say you should get before a book comes out, a 6-month prep time. And that's not counting like the development time or anything on the book. That's just like 6 months to allow you to like, say this comic is coming out and the marketing and all that stuff and the build up. So like to do an anthology from conception to completion and everything in between, this is like one of those things that, should never get done, because it's a lot of 12-hour days of craziness. And chasing people down too, when you're afraid that like you haven't heard from somebody in 2 weeks and you're like, are you still working on this story?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy because I remember just from a spectator perspective, I remember it being announced, and it just felt like before I knew it, it was being released. You had a release date and it was coming out. So you guys got an incredible amount of work done in a very short period of time.
That was my when we were doing this, I was like, and we were deciding on when the book would come out. One of the things I said was like, it's gotta be like, I was like really pushing for like March, April. There was talking maybe like summer, and I was like, no. I was like, I understand why, but it's really got to be like a springtime. And I came to find out that the higher ups at Lion Forge agreed on that too, because they were like, with charity book, it's a very sensitive thing, because you don't want to have it come out when like it's gotten past the point where nobody's talking about the situation anymore. Which, I mean, even though stuff is still ongoing in Puerto Rico, you kind of get that feeling that like oh no, what happened to Puerto Rico is kind of like not really in the thing anymore, you know?
Yeah, no, our news cycle is ridiculous. Yeah.
So you have to like kind of like be when the news cycle is still there, and then if it's out of the news cycle, at least be early enough so that it's not out of people's brains yet, and so that was the thing. So I was glad we were able to get March, because I think anything past that, I think it really would have affected how well the book did and how it continues to do.
Yeah, be very pleased with the end product, and what I think was Amazon. It got to a point where Amazon was like, "This book is going to be late shipping," and it made me wonder, like, how many orders did you get that you're telling us it is going to be late?
Yeah, one of the editors.
You heard that? That's crazy.
One of the editors of the book, Neil, he had gotten that message, and his parents got that message. He was like, "It says the book's going to be late," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Amazon ain't getting it until like 2 weeks later." I was like, and I thought the same thing. I was like, "How many people are ordering this book?" I was like, "That's insane." I was like, "That's good, but that's insane."
And then all of a sudden, then they started delivering some books on time, because I would start seeing reactions from my friends who were like, "Oh, I just got the book," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, it told me it was going to be late." So it was interesting how that all played out. I think it was for the best.
I think what happened was, because I noticed some people got the book before it was supposed to come out. For like Amazon's date, I think it was March 20th, 29th. And some people got the book earlier than that. I think what happened is, and I don't know this for sure or not, this is just me guessing. I think like Amazon, someone internally and Amazon messed up, and like I guess they set up certain amount of orders to like, oh yes, March 14th, and then Amazon was like, wait, what? That's not when the book comes out for us. Because that's the only thing that makes sense in my head. Other than a lot of people ordered it, but just to see some people getting it before the actual Amazon date, I was just like, huh, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, it made me laugh because it was during the time where our lovely president is like blaming Jeff Bezos for everything. So it's like, oh well, we'll just blame Amazon.
Right?
They're not paying the post office, so clearly things are going to be late.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the reaction. What is the reaction that you've been getting when you're doing talks and panels?
Love, nothing but love. To sum it up easily, there is just a love, appreciation, just wonder that this exists, and the good that everyone hopes it will do, and that they, how it represents, the Latinx people. It's just been nothing but positivity. I don't, and yeah, of course, when you put anything out, and you look at the reviews, which every writer, artist, creator always says, don't ever read reviews.
Don't read reviews. Yeah. Yeah.
And I have looked at some of the reviews on Amazon and Goodreads, and I'm like, and there's, I just look at them and I'm like, I should say something, but I'm not, because
Are you serious? They were negative ones?
Well, people are idiots.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Yeah.
There's some that where it's like, I don't think they understand, and it's that thing that you get in comic books where fans of like Marvel and DC books and other companies don't understand how the sauce is made, and they think they do. So they say all this stuff that you're like, no, none of that is right. And
oh wait, let me guess. There was like there's no White Strong anthology, right?
No, I haven't come upon any of those. But
Caucasian Strong.
It's literally the cliche like arguments about art, on the book, or or story. You know, just it's just
Are
those.
you kidding me? The art on the book is incredible.
That's
Like,
what
I'm
I'm
an
saying.
artist. I love this artwork.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's a variety of art. It's not all. I think when they, a lot of people have this mentality too. When they think of comic books, they think of like, again, Marvel and DC. Not to keep
Right,
going
right.
back to them. So they expect a certain type of art, and when they don't get that, they're just like, well, this doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, well, comic books isn't just one type of style. It's
Right.
it's many, and I like to think at this point people get that, but they fail me every time.
Yeah, that's true.
And don't get me wrong. There are plenty of good positive reviews. There's just always the ones that stick out are always the negative ones. The ones that are just like, you know what, I want to fight right now, but you know what, that's cool.
Right.
And I mean, it is what it is. But I think what gets to me, and I'm gonna try not to be emotional, but I when I was in LA, or rather Anaheim, I ran into a friend of mine who is Puerto Rican, and she knew that I wrote a story in the book, and she wanted to see it because she ordered it on Amazon. It hadn't come in yet. And she started reading it, and then she just started crying. You know what I mean? And it threw me back, like, you. And of course, whether you make them cry or not, it's always very like, oh my God, what do I do? And I'm in public too, so I don't want people to think that I made her cry.
Right?
Like, what did you say to her? So, her reaction was just very like, this, it was something to the effect that her daughter can read this, you know what I mean, and understand what it's like to be Puerto Rican, you know what I mean, or there was so much richness in the book, and she skimmed through it. It kind of was just like, this is why we did this, you know what I mean?
Right.
Matter anything else, yes, the money matters and stuff like that, but it's almost sort of like a visual reminder of where we come from, no matter the storyline. And I think that's the one thing that I've taken away from it. And for my fellow Puerto Ricans who have read the book or have gotten it, the reaction is very similar. Maybe not all tears, but just very thrown back by, again, the way the book is set up, the storylines in it. I mean, there are stories I read that I had to close the book and be like, wow, this is some powerful shit right here.
Yeah.
And it's wow, so kudos, Marco. It was, I'm so glad that this is something that you were able to pull off.
Thank you. Speaking of, to follow up on your story, when I was at C2E2, and I had a moment where I basically had to be like, don't cry, because this father came up with his daughter, and he lived in Chicago, and she lived in Puerto Rico with her mom, and she was there through both hurricanes. And so now she lives in Chicago with her dad. And, he knew about the book and everything. And they were at C2E2 because they're nerds. But he brought her to the booth, and he bought a copy of the book and wanted me to sign it. And we were talking. And, and asked her how she was doing. And, she was like, great, and smiling and everything. And it just kind of like, it made me stand back. And it was like, that's one of two experiences I've had when it came to this book. But that one was like, it was one of those things where I was like, don't freaking cry in front of these people. Cause like, and he was like so happy about the book. And it was just like, for him to come up with his daughter who had went through all that, and to be able to show her this book that, like, hey, this is, about us and everything, and it's going to do all this good and everything. It was just one of those very humbling experiences.
Well, I have a thought about that. I mean, reading your intro to the book, and also just what you described tonight as you were talking about how it came together. The one thing that I'm struck by is, obviously this book has had such a large and important impact. And it all started from you, basically saying like, I want to do something. I need to do something, to help, and following through. And, I think for a lot of us, it's like we have great ideas. We have things that we'd like to do, but we don't, life intervenes, and like sometimes we always find reasons not to do it. And I think like what has been created through you and and Desiree and everyone at Lion Forge and all these incredible creators is something that I think is a testament to basically to everyone who has a story to tell or who wants to do something, through their art, to not allow those voices to stop you. You know what I mean? Because like, this is something that's important, and it could have easily just, not happened, like many of us when we set aside what we want to do. So yeah, props to you on that. I actually wanted to just like, I have a question for both you, Tony, and for you, Marco.
Yep.
Obviously we've been talking about like the incredible collection of stories in the book. And I know, Tony, you're much too humble to really toot your horn about your own story, but without spoiling it, can you just tell us a little bit about the experience of writing it, and also just like maybe like thematically, like what your aim was with the story?
For me, it's interesting because Desiree isn't. When she sort of accepted my pitch, I almost shit myself, because I'm like, this is actually happening, and I have to find an artist. So, excuse me. So that was really I was kind of freaking out at the same time trying to complete the story. And one of the things that I really was trying to tell was a story that was personal to me. And I had thought about something that my aunt had once told me about. I had two great uncles who fought in World War II. My dad is also in the Navy. And my grandfather was also like in the military. And the two stories of my great uncles being in World War II are so fascinating. One was he was an MP, and he was actually stationed somewhere close to Germany. And when they used to get soldiers in jail, they would tell the military that they weren't going to say the spick there. And my family is dark, so it wasn't just about Puerto Rican, it was also about him being black as well. So that was something that you don't see that in like a lot of movies and stuff like that about darker skinned people who are in the war, who served important roles, and then when it comes down to interrogations, they couldn't even be in the room, even though that was part of their job. You know what I mean? So there are these certain Nazi prisoners that would get special treatment, even though they were prisoners, and it was just crazy. So that was one. The other uncle I had, he fought over France, and like I guess he was a pilot, and he died over France or something. Like his apparently he's buried over there. So I don't know or remember the story too much, but my point is that I realized that my family has a history of military service. And it really struck me, this whole notion that people didn't realize that Puerto Ricans are American citizens, but yet we die and fight for this country. And I wanted to write a story that sort of involved those themes of not understanding citizenship and how many of us in our bloodlines have given our families have given our lives for this country that doesn't even recognize that citizenship. So the story is very much centered around that. And I will say that I could have wrote like 20 pages, but I felt like I wasn't given like a page limit, which is okay, because I was just like, I'm going to make this short because I'm not sure what I'm doing. So I'm just going to do it as much as I can and try to pack in as much. And that to me is what I think, making it nice and short and really to the point is what is, and I think it worked. So, and one more thing before I let Marco speak about his artist was very crucial here, because also being part Puerto Rican and knowing his work, because we worked on another project, he understood where I was going with this. And he also put a part of himself in the story. I think there's a part with the grandparents, and he basically drew his grandparents. You know what I mean? So I was just like, wow, that blew me away. You know what I mean? So we put ourselves, and it's a personal touch in the story, and yeah, it's something that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, man, definitely. And just if I could, man, like one thing, well, just in your description right there, you mentioned it, but your story, there's knowledge there. You're sharing information that more people should know, but they don't. And I think that that's like it's a theme that runs throughout the book. A lot of stories in the book are, just informative, but definitely like that whole idea of military service, particularly in this time when a lot of people, well, obviously I don't even have to say it, but there's a lot of people not even recognizing the humanity and the citizenship of the people of Puerto Rico. But it's super important. And Marco, in your story too, like there's a theme of like colonialism and the impact it's had. And like I really liked the way that you handled it in your story. And like obviously I think your story, like with Tony's, in a different way, there's something that people can learn from that as well. So hey, can you just tell us a little bit about the creation of your story?
Yeah. Before I do though, I do want to say something to Tony.
Yeah.
So I like every story in this anthology, but there's a number that made me tear up. It's like I think 2 or 3, and Tony's was one of them because I come from a big military family. Like I have family that goes back to like serving in World War One. So hey, I just want to say, man, your story, I definitely felt it when I read it, and it was one of those things after reading it, I was like, this is, because you have an idea in your head of these stories as you see bits and pieces of them, but to see how some of them can touch you and how you realize, like, we as a group, whether it's Puerto Ricans or Latinx people, you can definitely see in the book there's a lot of shared experiences. But on my story, I'm a big fan of Steven Spielberg. And I'm a big fan of 80s films and movies like Goonies and, E.T., things like that. And the thing about a lot of these films is that the majority, and probably even 100%, if I were to think about it, all the kids are generally, and the family members are white. Not that that's a bad thing, but you don't ever see a movie like that where the kids and the parents happen to be Puerto Rican or Asian, or African American. There's a movie I really love. I don't know if you guys seen it, called Roll Bounce. And it's about these kids. I think it takes place in the 70s, and it's about these African American kids, and it comes off like a movie you would expect like John Hughes to do, or one of those teen movies that would have came out in the 80s or 90s or something like that. So with my story, I really wanted to just do something that's this Spielberg-esque adventure story, but I also wanted to play with some of the mythology of Puerto Rico, the Taino stuff, because mythology adapts and changes, based on the time. So I wanted to change some stuff around, and urban legend stuff like the chupacabra. I decided to make the chupacabra. I was like, oh, let's make it a furry, very like Stitch, Lilo and Stitch type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that would be. I figure like the chupacabra is very much like it's a goat sucker. It's a thing that goes out and terrorizes people. And I thought it'd be funny if you make it something that like children would be like, that's the coolest thing ever. And so, but then I also wanted to include the whole idea of like, because I end the story with this whole idea of like, the only, and I guess some people could say like it's a bit negative, because I end the story with the idea that not the only people you can trust, but the idea of like, we can do better together. The whole notion of, Puerto Rican society, Latinx society, things like that. The idea that we can persevere together against all odds. But I guess in a way in the story, I kind of didn't write it as the only way we're gonna have a future is if we all come together with each other, and by together I meant like Latinx people, not white people and Latinx people. I was just like, because my thing, and not to diverge, but my thing with Puerto Rico is, people talk about that there's three options. There's to continue with the Commonwealth, to become a state, or to become independent. I don't think America is ever, and I'm sorry, fellow Puerto Ricans, but ever going to let Puerto Rico become a state.
I agree.
Especially not at this point with the debt. Two, I think Commonwealth, come on. I mean, that just says it, and it's not even really a Commonwealth, it's a colony,
Yep.
And so I think the only thing is independence. I think this is the only option for Puerto Rico to have a future of any kind. So I wanted, when I was writing the story of Derek, which was, I gotta give a shout out to Jamie Jones who drew it and DC Hopkins who lettered it, is that I wanted it to basically be like, here's the story of this Taino and his people who trusted these people that were like, the typical invader tale, and which at first it was a story of trust, because they did say, if you look at the history stuff, Taino people, they were a matriarchal society, and they were very they weren't like, oh, you've come into our land, so we're gonna kill you. It wasn't like that period in Japanese society where any gaijin would come on the land and they would cut their head off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're very welcoming, but then they saw what that did. So I wanted it to end with this this sort of warning he gives the kids that don't make the mistakes we did, learn from us, and know that you as a people, you come from a proud heritage, that you can persevere and do great together, that you don't need America, you don't need white people, you just need each other. And that's ultimately what I wanted to get across, besides a cool kick butt a tale with monsters and and supernatural stuff like that. I also wanted to throw a little a little knowledge in there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, and I think both of your stories are examples of you did them with what, like less than 10 pages. You really told a very rich story, each of you, in this short format. So I think that just props to you guys, man.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I would say also, it was to me, this is the first time I've ever done anything remotely like this. It was a huge learning lesson too. I enjoyed it. There were times where I'll send edits and then I'm like, I hope it's okay. I hope I'm doing all right. But I didn't want to feel too needy. I don't want to be like, so how's it going? So it was just definitely one of those things where it's like, I need to sort of calm down a little bit and just, let the process happen. So it was a big learning thing for me. Ooh, sorry, I did get emotional. That's why I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
It gets a little too much. So
it's understandable.
Thank you. All right. So what's next for Puerto Rico Strong? Am I correct that the first printing has sold out?
Yes, that was so. I was at C2E2 on the convention end, and I was also there for the retailer summit because I do basically work part-time at these stores. So I went there with them for the retailer summit. So I got to see all that cool stuff from the retailer's end. And it was during the retailer summit where you're basically in this gigantic hall and all these different publishers do presentations. And when Lionforge went up was when they announced that the book is going into a second printing. And that was literally my table. We were probably it was like high school pop.
Wow.
And it's it's going to a second printing. I think the only difference with the second printing is it's going to include some information on the charity. And I think that's basically the only difference that between the first and the second printing. And there's more press stuff, interviews and things coming up, but there's something that I was privy to at C2E2, because at C2E2 I got to meet a lot of I got to see Carl who in person finally for the first time. I'm used to talking to him through Skype or on phone or through email back from the days when I did some story stuff for them. So I got to meet him in person. I got to meet David, the co-founder of the company, and the head of the company. And I get to meet a bunch of other people, and so I was privy to some. I can't really talk about it, but there's going to be there's something to work on that's going to be very, very cool. Involved Puerto Rico strong, and I get the most I can say is Puerto Ricans. I can't say anything more than that. But it's gonna be really special.
That's all you need to say. That's all you need to say.
It's gonna be really special, really cool, and I think it's gonna really I think people are gonna be like, wow, that's really. And it's also gonna include another publisher who I can't say either, but it's gonna be something I think is gonna really touch a lot of people, and they're gonna be like, damn, they, it's when they told me about it, I was just like, yeah, we got a second printing, and then you throw this on me. I was like, okay.
Wow, man, that's exciting.
Awesome. So let's talk about the charity for a moment. It's the United Way. Am I correct?
Yes, it's United Way of Puerto Rico. David Stewart, who's the co-founder of Lion Forge, and the head, his family has a long history of working with the United Way. And we had looked at other charities. We didn't just immediately go to United Way. There's a variety of other charities that we looked at. There was a whole process. I mean, it was. That's why it took a little bit late, because I know in the beginning a lot of people were asking when the book was in pre-order stages. Who the charity is, stuff like that. Because it's and a lot of people think if you pick a charity, it's just it's done. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. The charity's yes, we'll take your money. No, I found out behind the scenes, it's not that easy. There's paperwork, there's lawyers, it's a whole thing, which is understandable because you're dealing with money that's, going to be going to do a lot of good. And with United Way, it's 3 different programs to help kids. And I forgot, sadly, I don't remember the 3 programs, which I should. But that's what they're focusing on with this, which I think is awesome because having been a kid who went through a hurricane with Hurricane Andrew, and the kids are the ones who get affected the most when it comes. As an adult, you can deal with a lot, but a child, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell them, hey, your world is going to be forever changed and it won't be the same, So the stuff that they're doing with United Way with these programs, I think is going to do a lot of good for these kids, Puerto Rican kids. And I think it's going to be really awesome. Another thing I forgot to mention was they had announced at C2E2 and then also during the panel that originally David Stewart and Lion Forge, they're going to do 25% matching. 25,000 matching. They're going to match the first 25,000. Now they're going to match the first 50,000.
Wow. Wow.
So that I thought was awesome. And then on top of that, which is something that a lot of people still forget, it was that Diamond said they were going to donate 5% of the money they made off the book to also the charity as well. So a lot of good. It's kind of crazy to think how good the help that this is going to do for Puerto Rico and these kids. It's just crazy when you think of you can 10 years I can look back and be I was I kind of helped make that happen.
Yeah. Right. So and I'm gonna phrase this in a way that's probably oh my God, I probably didn't think about this, but if you really think about it, what you've done or helped create, you've done more than the president of the United States has for the island of Puerto Rico. Have you thought about that?
Someone brought that up, I think, right after we finished the book, or maybe no, I think it was a bit when the book was just coming out, and I think someone even might have mentioned it when I was here doing a signing at this shop here in Tampa. I think they mentioned it to me, and at first, it doesn't really stick in your head, and you're just like, oh yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and then like later on when you think about it, you're like, wow, it's just one of those like, you're just like, yeah, but when you think about it, you're like, yeah, that's crazy, but then you're also like, yeah, that's crazy, and that
exactly.
shouldn't, like it has a very like, yeah, like, oh no, that's nuts, but then also it's very like down to reality of like, what the hell, that shouldn't be,
right?
Sad and sobering.
Mm-hmm.
Very sobering. Wow. I feel like we got a lot out there. So I feel that this book has also kind of sparked other books as well. I know that Reconstruction is coming out, and I don't really remember where it's coming out, but basically that is DC. It's by DC in collaboration with Edgardo, who created La Puertorriqueña, which I find to be shocking. I was like, wait a minute, you got DC? That's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
well, they did the Love is Love anthology, so I guess hopefully it's something good that DC is doing.
Right.
I'm
interesting, and I go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was sorry. I was just gonna say I'm up for because to me, because I know when the Reconstruction got announced, I got some messages in my Messenger account on Facebook, and I was just like, yeah, I knew about it. Like I knew about it way beforehand because we knew about it because we knew Edgardo was doing something since like late last year, I think it was, and that it was involving DC. So we had known for quite a while, and so we were messaging me because people are just like, "Are you seeing this?" And I'm like, "Yes, another book helping Puerto Rico." Oh no! And I'm like, "What do you want me to say here, people? Are you expecting me to say something negative?"
Exactly.
I'm like, "Come on!" But
absolutely.
I mean,
no,
I'm all for it. If Image wants to put one out, if every publisher,
thank you. Right.
If every publisher wants to put one out, like I'm down for it. I'm like, the more the better, and the more money that goes towards helping people, the best in my book.
Yeah,
absolutely. Not sure if I have any other questions, to be honest. So many things racing.
Well, we covered
Marcus, do you have any other questions about Puerto Rico Strong before we move on to topics?
I mean, I feel like we covered most of them. I'm very curious about this upcoming project that you mentioned, but I know you can't really say more. But
I can't say anything, but I like to use the old cliche fires in the iron with I have a bunch with one publisher. And then the independent thing that I mentioned before, that I'm doing with Derek and Neil, and then I have a few things going on with two other publishers. Something, and the thing going off two other publishers might become like one super thing. I mean, we'll see how that goes. But I'm pretty excited. Like some people are just like some people were telling me, some friends, they were like, oh man, that's when like I would, say like, yeah, so, this, might be happening, or this is happening. And they'd be like, they're like, yeah, I kind of expected it because of, you guys put out a really good anthology. And in my head, I was like, yeah, I guess. I mean, I didn't do the anthology to like be like, hey, give me work in the industry.
Right.
Let me do other stuff. But I guess that, I mean, is an effect of it, of having done something like this, that other publishers and people get interested and they're like, yeah, we want to work with that guy. but I never like. I always feel like I have to say like that wasn't the intent.
Right.
Right. I didn't ever go with that intent, and I don't ever go to other people and be like, oh, you may not know me, but I'm Mr. Puerto Rico Strong. But yeah, it's crazy. And it makes me happy because like one of the things the industry is lacking is Latinx talent. I mean there is, but it's just like what's top 20 publishers
right.
Are lacking is Latinx talent and that viewpoint. And I think, so I'm happy to be one that will hopefully be out there doing a lot of work and showing, our viewpoint.
Yeah. Well, the talent is there. I think it's abundant. I think it's a matter of the platform that's given.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. And it's just, we're here, we exist, just nobody wants to actually look for us.
Right. Absolutely. So, moving on to topics. I don't even know where to begin. I just know that there's a lot of movies coming out. So, yes. Is there any particular movie that you're looking forward to?
I mean, T'Challa the sequel is a big one. That's my main one, but I'm looking forward to a few of them. I actually am hoping. Well, I promised my daughter we're going to see Black Panther again tomorrow. But once I return to seeing non-Black Panther movies, I'd like to check out Quiet Place. I've been hearing a lot of really good things about that.
So have I. Yeah.
Have you seen it, Marco?
No, but it's been getting. I love horror movies. My mom got me into because she reads like Stephen King novels and watch horror movies, and as a kid, I got that bug. So I'm really excited I might go tomorrow to the theater to watch The Quiet Place. But I want to ask you something. How many times have each of you seen Black Panther?
This will be my fourth tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? I've only seen it twice, and in my defense, I'm waiting for it to come out so I can watch it every day.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. You got to kind of like space it out a little bit. You don't want it to like. Yeah, I got you.
I've seen it twice too. I wanted to see a third. I actually wanted to see it like I was literally had this thing where I was like just gonna keep going every week and watch it like once a week at least. But I at least want to try to catch it before it leaves theaters. But it's definite. It's gonna get watched a lot on home video. One of the things I love so much about that movie is he perfectly weaves in. Coogler and the writers and everybody, they perfectly weave in the topics and the issues without coming off preachy,
Yeah.
And I think that's a fantastic. It's a thing that a lot of people don't know how to do anymore. Because literally, as other people that you're like, and by other people I mean white people, that should know these things. Like it's presented in such a way in which they might be like, wait a second, and you're like, yes, see,
Yeah.
you're like, this is what they're going through. You understand now, or at least I hope. And then, but outside of the issues it covers and the topics, it's just a really, really, really good film, and I'm a huge fan of anything pulp. So like Black Panther and characters like the Shadow and Batman and Rocketeer and just the whole pulp era. And like the Black Panther fits that because it's like he's like he fits that whole world of like the Phantom, except it's not a white dude running around Africa. It's a black dude running around Africa,
right.
Badass and awesome. And like the whole motif of the Black Panther, it's just like it's killer. It's one of those like. If the Black Panther never existed and a friend told you, hey, I got this idea for a story, and he explains the Black Panther, you'd be so jealous. You'd be like, why didn't I think of that?
Right.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I also want to give a shout out to Joe Robert Cole, who's the other. He was the co-writer with Ryan Coogler, because I mean, I think Ryan Coogler obviously is a household name, but like Joe Robert Cole also, obviously did the damn thing. So yeah, the way that they were able to tell that tale and like you said, like really weave in the issues just in a very layered manner. Like there's like issues on issues there, and yeah, it's masterful. And I think that one of the things that I've really been impressed by is the fact that in a lot of general there's been a lot of discussions obviously from Black people and people of the diaspora about this film, but even in some of the discussions outside of it, the idea of Killmonger being the best MCU villain like has been pretty omnipresent. Like a lot of people are talking about it, and not just Black people. And I think that's a feat in and of itself. You know what I'm saying? Like, because the Killmonger, obviously, there's things that make you say right on about him, and there's things that obviously you're like, ooh, you don't have to do that. But it's like the you can't look at him as a compassionate villain without absorbing the weight of institutional racism and just the crimes of this country, basically. So I think that like he's very educational. I think a lot of us come to the theater and we got it immediately, and I think that, but I do think that there's people who didn't necessarily get it, who do, or even understand a little bit more, having seen the film. So I think that's a feat in and of itself.
Yeah, and I think also it also kind of bothers me when we start having these discussions like, when are we going to get our Black Panther movie?
Oh yeah.
When are we going to? I'm like, really? I think I've seen that discussion somewhere on social media. Where's the next like Latino Black Panther? And I'm just like, it's Black Panther. I mean, the thing is that all the themes are just about the same. You got colonialism, you have being able to escape, the treachery of white people, and being able to sort of, how that sort of affects your not only your culture but your people as a whole. And I think that, the one thing that Black Panther does is that it wraps all of that in a superhero film. You know what I mean? And it's definitely one of the few movies that Marvel has had that makes you really think about everything you know. Not only about the world of Marvel, but sort of the world around you. And if Wakanda was real, how would that actually take place? It's fascinating.
I love that you bring up the thing of Latin people with the "Where's Our" movie, because it's one of those things that I was seeing some of that too, and I was like, you kind of like me. I'm a person with like, I pick and choose who I argue with online, because I'm like, nobody got time for that.
I wish I had that. Yeah,
I can spend more time writing a good story that's gonna do a lot more better for my people than arguing with some knucklehead online. But one of the things that sometimes people don't think is that our history, especially in the Caribbean, if you're Dominican, Cuban, Puerto Rican, is your history is tied in deeply with
Africa,
African people and Africa. And I mean, it's like you just gotta look in the mirror and look at like my hair. I usually keep it short because like I'm lazy. But when it grows out, it is curly. Things that like you look at features, not physical, but from physical to food to art to things. It's like that is because the slaves that were brought over, those are your people. This is your one of the things I like to say to people, especially when it comes to the U.S., is well, I would say Hispanics is Black, African culture is your culture, but like Black culture is American culture, because like there's just such a without it, there would a lot of stuff wouldn't be possible. A lot of stuff wouldn't be possible when you think about it. Society would be very different. especially, Caribbean society, when you live on those islands that are not that far apart from each other.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, like, when I watched Black Panther, I was all ready to come out of that theater and be like, time to take these white people down. Yeah, I was like, gonna go to the island and rise up, and and it was just like, it's very much to me, anybody who lives in a country or an island, where you're dealing with these issues, you can relate to this movie, even if you're living in a Asian country that used to be, property of the U.S. Like the Philippines used to be, owned by the U.S. until like it was the 1950s or whatever. So it's just one of those things that, like, and I think it goes to, there's a whole deep rooted racism in that Latin people don't like to talk about a lot. That is in, Latino culture. And they just don't want to, I don't know, for whatever reason. It's one of those things you realize when you're a kid. And you have certain family members. I think everybody's had those certain family members that talk a certain way about, either lighter skin or darker skin Hispanics. I mean, there's even music and songs, that talk about, moms being scared of their daughters dating, the darker skinned Hispanic guy. And it's these songs that people dance to when you're a kid and you're thinking about this music, and like you're translating, when you know another language, you translate things like it's like second nature. Just, it comes in your head. You can bounce between English and Spanish, and you're like, wait a second, is this song about a mom? And they do it in a joking way. I'm like, is it about a mom being scared that her daughter's dating a black, Afro Latino? I'm like, this is the worst song ever. Why are we dancing to this?
It's true though. Absolutely.
It's just crazy. I think, Latinx people just need to have a come to Jesus moment and realize that, like, without African culture, they wouldn't exist. You wouldn't be who you are. It's a mixture of the Taino, the African people, and the Spaniards, and like, so without that, you wouldn't. I mean, you can't really say like, yes, we don't have that. It's like, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure you do. There's no way around it. You can hope and pray all you want, but no, it's part of your blood and it's part of your history and everything.
I can't really snap my fingers, but if I could, I'd be snapping it all over what you just said. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can't. I wish I could attribute the quote. I was listening to an interview recently, and the quote was something to the effect of, it's very hard to live in a racist society or a society where you're drowning in racism and not get a little bit wet, And I think that I wish I could remember where that's from, but like that's just it though. It's like this, like these like colonized like societies and attitudes. I think that they ingrain some really messed up things that we inflict on each other internally, and then it just leads to division, which leads to people remaining colonized in a sense.
Yeah, the colonized mind state is real. It's absolutely real, and I deal with that with my own family, and it doesn't matter how light or dark they are. It's always the same thing, And it's funny. It makes me think about when you were talking about how Latinx people have issues that they don't want to really talk about, and they'll name people. And I remember the word "cocolo" comes to my mind. It's a word I've heard as referred to darker skinned people. And I've had those arguments where I'll say, well, I'm black, and they're like, you're not black, and I'm like, well, what am I then? Oh, you're just dark skinned or you're tanned, and I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's definitely conversations that need to be had, and conversations that we sometimes have to force, not just on our people, but our family in particular. Because I think family is probably, the worst culprits in these certain situations. And quite frankly, we've let them get away with it for years,
I I remember when I was a kid, and I think it might have been my great grandmother. I don't remember who it was, but I know somebody in my family. So, when you're a kid and you basically are like, rubbing your nose, or when you have like you're really sick or whatever. And I forgot something that I would do with my nose when I was sick. That a relative would be like, "Oh, stop doing that, or you're gonna your nose is gonna look like they'd be like a negrito, stuff like that." Like they would say, which basically negrito, for those who don't know Spanish, is basically like like a black person. It's basically it's not a 1-for-1 translation, I guess, but like that.
Right.
And as a kid, I would always be like, "Wait, what?" I was like, that doesn't make what? Even as a kid, I was one of those like, this okay, what I don't whatever. And as a kid, you're just like, I'm not going to talk back, but like you crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead, Marcus.
No, you go ahead, Tony.
No, I was going to move on to another topic.
Yeah.
Or at least another movie. Are you excited all about the Han Solo movie? I feel like that's a hit or miss.
I don't know about no Han Solo movie, but I do know there is a Lando Calrissian movie coming out.
That's right. We got Lando and T'Challa coming out.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
So, yo,
I'm excited about Lando.
I am too.
When I saw that teaser trailer, and I was like, who cares about Han? This is a Han Solo and a Lando film, because every scene with what's his name again? The
Donald
actor?
Glover.
Yes, dude, that dude is amazing. Atlanta, I love.
Oh yeah,
that show.
God.
Which we got to talk about that after this, but yeah.
He is so talented, so brilliant. Childish Gambino, and literally his scenes in that teaser trailer. I'm not even talking about the full trailer that dropped recently. The teaser trailer, I was like, this dude just, it just dripping the coolness that is that character. It's like, I was like, this was one of the best castings. I was like, Han Solo's in this film. Who cares? Him and his robot, partner. I was like, if there's not a spin-off movie with them, I don't care about anything Star Wars ever again.
Yeah.
Yes. So what I will say in relation to this is that there is a book coming out called Last Shot, and that has been written by DJ Older.
Yeah.
First, I'm excited because it's a Latino author, obviously. But he wrote a little bit in the there was a Star Wars anthology that came out, I think, last year for the 40th anniversary, and his story was amazing. So to know that he sort of has gotten his own book, is able to tell this story about not only Han Solo but about Lando as well. I can't wait to sort of pick that up. So that would be my suggestion. Before you see the Solo movie, I think you should read the book. That is a prequel that leads up to the movie, or at least I believe so. But who knows? Just read it. I think it'll be interesting.
I'll have to check it out because, when you're a kid, and I didn't get really more into Star Wars until I was a teenager. When I was a kid, I saw the movies, but I think I remember more seeing like those horrible Ewok films. And I had toys and stuff. But a lot of kids are like, oh, I'm Han Solo, or oh, I'm Luke Skywalker. And my favorite character, and I mean, this is no lie, I know some people might be like, but was Lando. I mean, he was the greatest dude in the galaxy.
We've spoken about that. Like a lot of people make jokes about the perm and everything, but Lando was dope, and I think he gets a lot of flack for being a quote unquote traitor in Empire. But it's like, what was he supposed to do? He was in charge of a whole city.
Yes, he was in charge of a city. He was the coolest cat.
And like it's like Han rolls up out of nowhere and was like, yo, let me hold something. It's like he had to do what he had to do for his people.
How are you gonna like look? Yeah, Luke had the Force, whatever, and Han Solo had Chewbacca in the ship, but Lando was like, yo, I got this city. Like, I mean, and he is just and he's ballsy enough in the last film in Return of the Jedi to wear
Mhm.
Han's clothes and look better wearing Han's clothes than Hans himself.
Oh,
You know?
and
That's
fly
true.
that ship.
And he got
And
the
fly that
Falcon back.
ship.
And
Yeah.
he blew up the Death Star.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. But nobody talks about that, right?
You
The
know?
Battle of Endor is one of the greatest battles that we've seen, and nobody
Yep.
talks about that. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep.
And my man gets disrespected in 7 and 8. He's not even showing up in any of those films.
That's crazy.
We need to have you back on the show, so because we can politic. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Oh.
Woo,
But
we
yeah,
can talk
I'm
about
looking
Star
forward
Wars.
to it.
Yeah.
That
I'm looking forward to it.
I will say I was unsure about not Solo but Lando, but about the film. Not about Lando himself, but just the film. But I gotta say, the more trailers have come on, I'm on board. I'm ready for it.
Absolutely. So the other thing is that in sort of talking to you about coming on the show, you mentioned that you are a video gamer, like a big time gamer. So why don't you share with us what it is that you're playing? What's your favorite games?
Right now, I play a lot of Steam PC games. I mean, I guess a lot of games now are basically all the same because, unless you have like a Nintendo or a PlayStation, most third-party games show up on PC and also on the systems. But I do Steam right now. I don't have a system. If I get a system, it'll probably be the Switch from Nintendo. So I do Steam, and I was one of those people that, like, for the longest time was like, I will never, ever, ever play on a PC. And I hated that whole comment that PC gamers would do the PC master race, joke they would have. And even I used to work for Blizzard at one point at their call center in Austin, Texas. And I would never play like their games. I'd be like, no, I'm not playing these games. Like, screw the PC. And then one day I found myself like getting a really good PC, and I was like, I wonder what this. Let me check out this whole Steam thing. And then Steam does sales like 2 or 3 times a year, where the games become like really cheap. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm a PC gamer now. So recently, the thing with gaming is right now. So right now I'm playing this game called I think it's called Mercenaries, which is basically sort of like Metal Slug meets the whole art styling of I don't know if you guys ever played the Scott Pilgrim video game that came out on PlayStation, which was like a beat 'em up.
I missed that.
Yeah, it was like a beat 'em up, like River City Ransom style.
Right.
And it was really cool. So the art style of that game, the sprite style and everything, and the designs. I don't know if it's the same company or just the artist. Well, there's a company that put out a game called Mercenaries, which is like Metal Slug, Contra, shoot 'em up type thing. That's a lot of fun. I'm playing that. I have. This is the problem with Steam, is when they have the sales, you can rack up a lot of games. Like, seriously, I think like 60 something video games on my computer.
Wow.
and I have not. And there's like probably like 3/4 of them haven't been played yet, because when you finally, start doing stuff in life and becoming an adult, as I like to say, you then find yourself with like, oh crap, there is not enough time to play these games. So Mercenaries, there's another God Eater is a game I recently got, the first and second one, which is sort of like kind of like Attack on Titan. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Attack on Titan.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I'm familiar.
Yeah, so it's like Attack on Titan, in which you battle these giant monsters. I haven't cracked it open yet. I just got it, I think, yesterday or the day before. And basically, it was you bought the second game and it came with the first game.
Okay.
So I have that. I'm looking forward to playing the Secret of Mana remake. My most thing I'm probably looking forward to when it comes out is Kingdom Hearts 3. I follow a lot of. I'm one of those people that if I like something a lot, or if I want to get into it as a business, I have to know how it works behind the scenes. So I keep up with a lot of video game news, a lot of video game business news. Same thing I do with comic books. Like, you'll find I'll be like at least once or twice a month on comiccron.com looking up the sales numbers of the comic book industry. Like, what did the books do this month, and then trades, and versus last month and stuff like that, and where's the industry at? I mean, when the industry, I think it was 3 or 4, I don't remember when it was, when the industry tally went to where the industry was $1 billion industry of comics, I was like online, like, yeah. I was like, we're $1 billion industry. We're actually growing up. We're no longer just pamphlets. So I always like to know the behind the scenes stuff. But right now I'm playing Mercenaries. And then I'll probably play God Eater next. I do have to finally play Darksiders 2, because Darksiders 3 is coming out. That's a great, basically like Zelda style video game. The original first two were done by Joe Mad and THQ and Vigil Games back in the day. I do need to also get Joe Mad's Battle Chasers video game. I'm a huge Joe Mad fan. And I love the Battle Chasers comic, even though it'll probably never be finished, sadly. But the video game looks awesome. But with video games, if I get the Switch, Zelda, I have to get on that. But one of the things I'd like to see, and of course people are going to be like, oh, here goes bringing the politics into gaming, but I can't help it. One of the things I want to see more in video games, which I don't think anybody's really much gotten into in very detail. I know stuff that's talked about, and I see talking about more, is I'd like to see in video games more main characters that are ethnic, Latino, Asian, African American, stuff like that. And I'd like to see more, and I'm sure there is behind the scene, but usually when they talk of like the designer of the game, or the head designer and all that, it's usually again a lot of white dudes or white women. And it's good that there's a woman, but then usually it's a white woman, so I would like to see like a lot of the changes you're seeing, like and that people are trying to push with comics and movies and TV and things like that. I'd like to see that come to the world of video games. And I'm sure there'll be somebody that might, on Twitter tell me, there's a lot of, movement going on that maybe it's something I'm missing. But I think it's one of those things that, as an industry that's more popular than film, and that's more popular than comic books, at least to me, it doesn't feel like if they're making that type of push like those other industries are.
Oh, absolutely. I try to play video games as much as I can. It doesn't always work out, but I find that I have the most fun with the games that I see myself in. So, The Walking Dead. They're the games by Telltale.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the first one was such a. I loved it, and then end up playing the second season was great. And again, yes, I mean it's the storyline is what it is, but to feel that you're represented, even if you're playing a little Asian girl, it's different than always playing the standard white person.
Yeah.
Furthermore. Playing Battlefront 2 as Iden Versio was probably my highlight of the year in terms of video games. Not only getting to play a dark side character who is in the Empire, that it's a highlight in itself for me.
Right.
But knowing that it's a woman and knowing that it is also an Asian Pacific Islander woman that was it. It was absolutely I loved every moment of it, and I wish that they had more of that. I really do. So I totally agree with your point.
Oh, you're gonna make me have to upgrade systems, Tony.
Yeah.
I'm still on the PS3, but
I know. You know what? The only reason why I got a PS4 is because my PS3 broke. So just real story. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be very honest. I had too much fun one night. Drinking, and I walked into my room and I walked into my dresser, and then it just fell. And I was just like, fuck. Oh, well, now I got to get PS4. But I mean, that happened like years later. But I was just like, yeah, I wasn't happy with myself. But that's the only reason why I have a PS4 right now.
Well, you never would have found Battlefront
I know.
not for that night.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Do you guys remember? This is back on PS2, but do you remember Getting Up? Mark Echo's Getting Up. They had the protagonist of that game was actually he was an Afro Latino man.
No, I don't think I.
Which game was it again?
Getting Up. It was like a graffiti themed game, and like the main character, you were a writer, and like it took place in this kind of dystopian future where like like basically everything was being suppressed. But so you're kind of like forced into this chain of events where you are both a graffiti artist and kind of a freedom fighter in a sense. So it was a dope game.
I wanna.
Yeah, it came out. It looks like it came out in I had to look it up. It looks like it came out in 2011.
Man,
was it that late? I felt like it. I guess it was. Yeah, maybe it was. I thought it was like more like 06.
I'm gonna need somebody to contact the video game company and tell them to remaster that game and re-release it.
Yeah, it came out as a PS2. It came out as a PS2 game.
Yeah, it was PS2. So I want to say it was more like 06 maybe or 05. But it was like they really.
You know what? You're absolutely right. It says February 14th, 2006.
Okay. Yeah.
I may have to do some research on this.
Yeah, but for me, man, it was like obviously like everyone has said, it's like seeing yourself in the game, but also even just like hip hop too. Like I love games that kind of like work hip hop into them as well. So it was a dope experience. But yeah, get on that, Sony.
I'm looking at it. I'm just like, wow. Marcus, let's talk about some crowdfunding. I know that we have some things we want to let our listeners know.
Yeah, definitely. I have, as we were talking, I tweeted out the links for these, but I'm definitely going to, implore everybody to check them out on air as well. The first one was our lovely guest from Wednesday. We had Jamila Rouser on to speak about Wash Day, which is a super dope book that she's coming out with. It's a slice of life book that deals with a Black woman and a Latino woman and their journeys with their hair. And it's already like smashed its goal. I'm looking at it, actually doubled its goal, but you still have 21 days to get on it, because it's like I'm gonna say that like the massive success of this book, I think, is testament to the relatability of it. And I think that was one of the driving forces behind its like immediate success. So
absolutely,
I don't think anybody will be disappointed if you get on board with this story.
Yes, and if I may add, the stretch goals I feel are very important for this, is because the stretch goals allow for Wash Day to be translated in Spanish.
Yes,
translated both digitally, and if it reaches its last stretch goal, 300 copies of Wash Day will be printed in Spanish. And Marco, you'll find this interesting. Spanish translation will be done by Jomette Gill, and the Spanish editor is Desiree.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is really awesome.
Yeah, good people all around.
Yes, definitely. Okay, next one.
Okay, so next up we have the Forward Comics is Nowhere Man. This is the latest volume in Nowhere Man, which if you haven't, like, just check out Forward Comics in general, because like it's Jerome Walford and team, but like Jerome does incredible work. He's also one of the most humble people I know in comics, but he's he's just good, man. He puts out good work. Nowhere Man was, I believe, the first series that he put out on Forward Comics. And it's like every volume, like you could just tell that like talent wise he grows by leaps and bounds. And if you check out the campaign, you'll see the artwork is stunning, and like he's just doing his thing. So check out the Nowhere Man campaign. Like I said, I tweeted the links out recently, so just check out our Twitter feed and you'll find more on that. He's close to his goal, but he needs us all to get on board and help put him over the top. So let's do that, And up next we have the Frederick Douglass North Star Kickstarter. It's for we also had the creators of this book on the show as well. It's Baron Robert Bell and Coy Turnbull, and it's also edited by Robert Jeffrey, who's been on the show multiple times too. He's one of our superstar guests as well.
Wait, did you say Robert Jeffrey?
Yeah.
I like Robert Jeffrey. I know him.
yeah, he's a cool dude. Yeah.
And I'd interviewed him once when I used to be a contributing writer for Bleeding Cool. Yeah, he does great work. So that's awesome.
Yeah, you know him from Route 3 and a lot of other work, Terminus Media. So yeah, man, it's a great team, and like Coy Turnbull is he's a beast with the artwork too. Like, and if you check out the campaign, like you can see some of his work, and he's just doing he's putting a lot of care and love into these this work, and it's a historical book that deals with some of the early years of Frederick Douglass, and they definitely have a goal of telling a really good story with good art and writing, and also just kind of like teaching people, because obviously Frederick Douglass is a figure who a lot of people know about, but their goal is to really tell his story in a more complete manner than what a lot of people might know. So yeah, man, so those are the Kickstarter campaigns that are on the tip of my tongue. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything. It's like always a lot of people putting out a lot of great campaigns, but if I'm missing anything, just like remind us or tweet it out, and
or if you have a Kickstarter you want us to sort of look at, just obviously tweet us, and we'll definitely take a look at it, and we will always support whether you're on the show or not. Sometimes people can't come on based on the hours that we're on, and that's okay. We try to support as many people as possible. Absolutely,
yeah. And matter of fact, Tony, along those lines, you can reach us at blackcomicschat@gmail.com. So yeah, if you have a Kickstarter or of one, email us. Preferably if 4 or 5 months in advance, which usually you do because it takes a while to get those launched. Let us know so we can get you scheduled and just find out more about your campaign.
Yes. So Marco, I had actually a question that sort of popped out of my head while I was being all emo. Cool. Puerto Rico is doing a Comic-Con. Is that a place you think you'll end up going, or? And I forgot.
Their possibility. Well, on my end, I'd have to say it's a maybe on the end of the book. On the book's end of the book having representation there, it's something that I've pushed for since earlier this year, I think late last year, and it's something I've talked to Lions Forge about. I've talked to the people behind Puerto Rico Comic-Con, and it's something that was recently discussed with me and the people behind Puerto Rico Comic-Con and with Lion Forge. So I'm hoping. But we'll see. I don't want to, there's nothing really I can say because I'm not the one who makes that decision, and I don't want to make it seem like, if Lion Forge does, it's because they're able to. I mean, I don't want to say what they can and cannot do as a company, but I'm hoping. I've got my fingers crossed, and I'm gonna next week follow up on that, and see where we are with that. But I think it would be fantastic if we could, just because I think it would mean a lot to the people going to that convention, and it's just something. I mean, I think to not have it, and again, this doesn't say anything about Lion Forge because they're a great company and all the people behind them are great, but I think to have it there would just say a lot and mean a lot, especially during a period, because I know what it's like to have to deal with the aftermath of a hurricane, and I just think to be there in celebration and all things nerdy with this book that's going to do a lot of good, I think it's just, I mean, how could you not want to party down the book with the people that, that you're trying to do something to help, I just, for me, if I could, move the world and make it do what I want to do, I'd say 100% yes.
Are you telling me you can't move the world? Because I feel like you did. Okay. All right. Well, that was a question that I wanted to ask because I know that they had recently announced that they were still going to have the Comic-Con. So I'm glad to know that at least there's some action, at least trying to get there. So I'm happy about that. Also, speaking about Comic-Cons, Black Comic Chat will be at Universal Fan Con. We have a panel on that Saturday, which I believe is the 28th. I might be wrong, but I know it's that weekend at 2 o'clock. So I will be sort of shooting out questions to the original 4 or 3, depending on who shows up. So I'll be moderating that panel. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, please send them our way, and we'll make sure that we ask those questions. If we're lucky, we'll get to do a live feed from Comic-Con.
Yeah, we're hoping to
Universal Fan Con
tech together.
And also, for those who might be going to Universal Fan Con, it has just been tweeted out that there is a private screening of Infinity War.
Oh,
so yes, you need to get your tickets. I'm actually, as soon as this podcast is over, I'm going to run and get my card and buy 2 passes. So for those who are going, I really suggest you do that because I need to watch this movie, and it just happens to come out when we're all going to be in Baltimore.
Oh man, I'm there. I'm getting mine.
Yeah, to watch this movie in front of everyone, including the Black Comics Chat fam, I think that's going to be special. It's going to be special. Although I feel like Leo might talk during the movie, so I don't think I'm going to sit next to him. I'm going to be real.
I've seen movies with Leo before. He can shut it down.
He can shut it down.
He'll be good. He'll be good.
He'll be good. Okay. Anything else on the list? Marco, this is your time. If there's anything else you want to sort of speak about or promote.
I think we've pretty much covered everything. I think I've pretty much said everything I wanted to say, and I'm sure.
I had a quick question, Marco.
Yeah.
Usually, in the origin story, we usually, I mean, you were so good at being concise in your origin story. I don't know if you really got to just some of your favorites. Like, who were some of your inspirations, comic-wise?
So when I wanted to be an artist, comic book artist, it was Chris Bacalo, Tom Grummett, Joe Madureira. Who else? I think I was anybody that like Art Adams, anybody that had that Todd McFarlane, anybody who had that like sort of like they had a little in their art styles, like they had a little bit of that cartoonishness, you know. And what meets regular comic art, I was always a big fan of because growing up, one of the things I loved was animation and behind the scenes of animation and anime and all that. And so I loved watching the behind the scenes stuff and documentaries on that and seeing the process. So I love those guys. And, of course, the classics like, George Perez, who like literally, he does a cover and it's filled with like hundreds of people. And you're just like, with writers, it would, it probably, I mean, right now, one of my favorite writers in the industry is Donny Cates, God Country. Was amazing. He's killing it. Like he's the only reason that I'm probably reading, the Marvel books that I am reading right now. But old school writers like Jim Shooter, Carl Kiesel, guys like that were very much an inspiration for me. I don't have favorite writer or artist because it always changes every day, every week, every month, because I read a lot of comic books. Like I made a joke once that like wherever I move to will be the if I get to go back to New York, or if I if I stay here in Florida, that wherever I have a house or apartment, like I'm never moving again because I'll have so many comic books and so many trade paperbacks that I'm like not gonna like want to keep moving that stuff over and over again. So yeah, those are some of the people that inspired me when I was younger, and then still inspire me to today. I should be able to say more. I mean, if I want to drop some Line X names, like Fabian Nicieza and Tony Bedard, those guys are really good as well. I should be able to name drop more, and I know there's more when it comes to artists than there is writers, unfortunately, in this industry. But yeah, those are the ones.
Cool.
Awesome. Speaking of which, what comics are you reading currently?
Ooh. So basically anything Donny Cates. I'm trying out all the DC New Age of Heroes stuff.
Okay.
I read a lot of independence books. Have you guys read Met Cadet U from Greg Pak?
No, I haven't.
It's a Boom Studios book. It's really cool because it takes place in Arizona in the future, and it's basically about a kid who's I think he's Korean, if I'm not mistaken, Korean American, and it's basically how in the future there's this organization, and they fight in giant mech robots, and they fight monsters, and every certain number of years these robots will come down and they'll pick pilots, and so these kids go through these programs where they military train and learn how to do all this stuff, and then there's like a day where they the robot will these top kids are chosen to go out where they meet these gigantic mech-sized robots, and the robots will pick who their pilot is, and this kid accidentally ends up going along, and one of the robots pick him, and he's not even part of the program. He's the child of a janitor. His mother is a janitor, and so he gets picked. And then eventually he becomes part of the program, and it's a really great I want to say it's a really good I guess you could say coming of age story, and really cool. It just plays with all the tropes of the stuff from back of the day of Gigantor and Gundam and all those things. And that's a really good comic. What else am I reading? Let me see. Since I'm in a comic shop, maybe I can look on the wall. Let's see, from Marvel, I'm probably just reading the Donny Cates stuff, and I think the Marvel 2-in-1 from DC, the New Age of Heroes, the Batman Creature of the Night. I'm not reading a lot of the mainstream DC books. I read Young Animal. I read a lot of Rick Remender stuff and Image. I mean, I pretty much cover all the publishers.
Are you reading Deadly Class?
Yes.
I love that book.
That is awesome. One of my favorite books that wrapped a long time ago was Lock and Key from Joe Hill, Stephen King's son.
Oh, yeah.
The IDW put out. That was fantastic. There really isn't, I read, I know some people, they stick with they only read superhero books, or some people only read science fiction or only drama or, stuff. As long as it's good and it interests me, for me, for comic books, there's someone can put a comic in front of me and I can read it and be like, oh, that's a good comic. But it's got to be more than just a good comic for me. It's got to when I'm reading it, I guess you could say in a way, even though it sounds kind of corny, it touches me, but not it's not it touches me, but it's sort of it just, it just gives me this oh yeah, this I got to keep reading. You know what I mean? It really I guess I connect with it or something, where I just, so there's stuff that I read, and there's stuff that I get in trade that I also read. And not everything I read do I get in trade, if that makes any sense. But I read way more comics than I probably should.
Right.
Oh, okay. Anything else for the good of the cause? Because honestly, I don't have any more questions.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we're almost at 2 hours either way, so this is usually our max time. We have so much, we already covered so much. So
we covered so much. Yes. So Marco, where can we find you on social media?
So on Twitter, I am at it's at Atomic ATOMIC Rex REXENT. So Atomic Rex ENT. On Facebook, just Marco Lopez. My current picture right now is Superboy from the 90s when he's the Metropolis kid. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't do Instagram because of social media. I used to like hardly use Twitter, and now I use it a lot more, and that's like the best you'll get out of me. I'm not a heavy, like, I use Facebook a good amount and I use Twitter a good amount, but like I don't think I could manage using Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I would just end up giving up on one of them or like all of them. But yeah, that's where everyone can find me.
Marcus, where can we find you?
On Twitter at Marcus Kwame, and just marcuskwame.com. You can find everything else there.
Awesome. And you can find me, Anthony Otero, on Twitter and Instagram under the same handle, which is Latinegro. I'm also on Facebook with the same name as well. And then if you go to anthonyotero.com, that's my website, a blog that I haven't written in a while, so it's very dusty. But you can get the listing of my works on that site. Okay.
Cool. Oh, I guess I forgot one more. Instagram, you can find me at Marcus_Kwame, because somebody already snagged my real name. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram too.
Oh, you didn't fight them?
I don't know, man, but it's I get the. I think they're squatting. I don't know if people like squat on names, but like
right.
They don't seem like a Marcus Kwame, and I've never met another Marcus Kwame.
They're waiting for you to get big, so then you have to buy that name. Watch.
Exactly.
One thing I did forget to since we're talking about social media and stuff like that. I think it's going live Monday. So kingskullcomics.com. If you go to that, it takes you to a dead page, but it'll eventually be a page where you can sign up for a newsletter, and we'll be able to find out the projects that we're working at. kingskullcomics.com. And I think the temp site goes live Monday. And I realized, because I'm sure Derek is listening to this, so if I didn't mention it, he'd be like, "Why didn't you mention it?" So that's something that me, Derek, and Neil are working on. And I think a lot of people are going to like that. Because one of the things that me and Derek really want to push for now and continuously for years to come is giving Latinx talent and other minority talent a voice and a way to get their work out there and to work on projects with them. So I think people are going to dig what we're doing with King Skull Comics and some other stuff with other publishers.
Also, I want to say that I saw that URL and I knew it wasn't working, and I didn't want to ask you in case there was something wrong.
We
didn't pay the fee. I didn't want to get into that. But.
No. Monday, it's one of those things that we were waiting for a moment till before we launched it, and then the other day we were talking about it, and they're like, "When's that going up?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm waiting for you guys to say, hey, let's put it up. The temp site is ready. I just need you guys to be like, all right, yeah, let's do it. So we can have be all on the same page. So Monday should be when it goes live."
Awesome. Marco, you've been a fantastic guest. I think it's been a great show. Thank you for everything that you've done and being a guest tonight.
Thanks for having me on here, guys. This has been a lot of fun. I love doing this, and I love talking with people about stuff like this, comics and the politics in comics and other fields of entertainment, and especially I love talking about this anthology. So thank you so much for having me on here.
Yeah, thank you for making it.
You don't be surprised if we ask you back by the end of the year.
I'd be fine with that, and with what we're planning to drop here soon, you guys may sooner, because I think we're gonna drop it in not the temp site, but something that's related to. I think we're gonna drop it in May or June.
Okay, I'm here for it.
Yes. Let us know.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, have a good night, everyone. Thank you to the audience, and we'll see you later.
All right, everyone. Peace.
Later.
Good night.